Want to welcome you to Hope Worldwide's first national volunteer training webinar. Excited that we have over 500 who registered for this event. My name is Reese Nealon, and after many years of serving as a church leader, I'm now an evangelist for Hope Worldwide. So the question that we want to consider tonight is, what should we do when someone asks us for money on the street? And I think I would ask you, what would you say in answer to that question? Would you say yes, no, maybe? So today, that seems like a very important question to me, but that wasn't always true. When we moved to Los Angeles over 30 years ago to help plant the church there, we were stunned by the amount of homeless people in Los Angeles. They were everywhere, it seemed. Just walking down the street, people would ask you for money. On the street corners, they would be there holding signs. Sometimes you were parked at a stoplight. They would come up to the car and ask you for money. And it was something different, something that we had never seen before. And I just looked this up yesterday, but currently there are over 63,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. And that number is up 13% since 2019. So that gives you an idea of the situation. I'm embarrassed to say that when we planted the church and started the church, we never really even asked that question. I didn't ask that question of myself. And as a leader in the church, as we were going forward there, I don't remember ever having a discussion about what we should do about people who might come up to us on the street and ask us for money. So some of you may know that it's only in the last 10 years that I have begun to understand more about the ministry of Jesus and how much he cares for the materially poor and those in need. And there's still so much for me to learn. In fact, when I was asked the question recently about what to do when someone asks you for money on the street, my honest answer was, I don't have a clue. So I'm looking forward to what I'm going to learn tonight during this webinar as well. So before we go further, we'd like to stop and ask you to take a short survey. It'll literally take seconds for you to do that. Please look at the chat box and you'll be able to do that and get the information for that. But I believe that we're going to get relevant answers tonight. I believe that we're going to learn a little more about what it means to experience homelessness. I believe that we're going to learn about how to build relationships with our neighbors, our unhoused neighbors who are in need there. So let's get started. First of all, Dr. Ben Barnett, our chief evangelist at Hope Worldwide and a great friend of mine, is going to speak to us. And then after that, Megan Ziegler is going to share as well. She works professionally in support of the homeless in Kansas City. So let's get started. Enjoy.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. Let me begin by telling you a story that just happened a few days ago. I was at home preparing for this devotional reading, and I was in my Bible, and I was looking at the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And since it's also the season of Lent, I was actually ending one of my fasts for that day. It was the early afternoon, and as I began to end my fast and Bible study, Tam and I jumped in the car to go find something to eat, and she was driving, and I'm on the passenger side. And as we were making our way, we were going through a shopping mall parking lot. And I alerted Tammy really quickly because we had just passed by a woman who had a sign that simply said homeless and hungry. And immediately I told Tammy, look, we got to turn around. This must be a sign from God. I'm ending my fast at this very hour. I was at home studying the rich man and Lazarus. Maybe God is saying something here. So Tammy turned the car around. Now, let me just be honest with you. This is not something that I would have routinely done. Under normal circumstances, I probably would have just kept going and just believed that there would be another opportunity later on to help someone in need, and that I would just miss this. And besides, I was really hungry and in a hurry and trying to eat. But the scriptures that day were inspiring me. I couldn't help it. So we circled back, and Tammy immediately exclaimed, I don't have any cash on me. And then I told her, I said, well, I've actually been putting cash in my wallet so that I can have money in time of like this. And then I started thinking, well, how much do I give? And is there a charity formula by giving money to those who ask or those who are in need? Do we take whatever cash that we have in our wallet, divide it by two, and then multiply it by a degree of apparent need? The only thing that I knew for sure was that I was not going to give all the cash that I had in my wallet because I might need it later. And turns out I did. So I grabbed about 10 $1 bills and I summoned the lady over to the car and I handed her the money. And she was extremely, extremely grateful. In fact, her gratitude in turn made me feel pretty good about myself. So we continued to drive for about another 100, 200 yards, talking about where we were going to go to eat. And then at the other end of the parking lot, we both saw another person, this time on the left side of the road, asking for money as well. Tam and I both acknowledged there is another person who's asking for money. But we realized and calculated this really quickly that he was on the left side of the road and there was a lot of traffic in the mall. And that if we stopped, we would actually block traffic. So we decided really quick, these are quick decisions that are going on, that we would just keep going. No sooner than we passed this second man, we saw a third man 50 yards up on the right asking for money as well. And so by this time, I knew that this guy was standing at the corner of the intersection of the mall and the street, and there were traffic everywhere. And I thought, well, we can't pass by and make the traffic excuse twice. So I began to take money out of my wallet in anticipation that I was going to eventually see this third man. And so I had the money and I started waving to the guy so that by the time I reached him, he could be at the car and I was going to give him the money. As he began to make his way to the car, it became very clear to me that he had some physical limitations and he was walking slower than I had anticipated. And so what was going to happen is I had anticipated in my mind that by the time he got to the curb, that I would be right in front of him. We would meet simultaneously. We would not stop traffic. I could give him some money, but he was walking slower. And this meant I was going to have to stop for traffic. And besides, I was really in a hurry. And I felt even some impatience in my spirit that he was moving really slowly. One time I thought I'll just get out, take the money and run over and give it to him. But he finally got to the car and I gave him the money. And as I gave him the cash, I could look in the side view mirror of the car and I could see the second man who was looking just 50 yards down this parking lot. He could see us giving this third man money. And I'm sure he probably thought to himself, what was it about me that they passed by me to go to the third man to give money? And all of this, you've been there, is happening very, very quickly. And then as soon as we began to pull off, then to go get something to eat, I started having all these questions run through my mind. And the first question was, had my generosity on this day been racially biased? But what do I mean? The first woman happened to be a Black woman. The second guy was a white man. And the third guy was a Black man. I started wondering, did I subconsciously ignore the white man? Was I being racially biased in my generosity? And then I thought, well, should we turn around and go find that second man and make this right? I started thinking about the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's what the Samaritan did. He went out of his way to help somebody alongside the road. Was I not willing to go out of my way to do that? And then I started thinking about, well, did I give enough to the first person and to the third person? Should I have given all the money that was in my wallet? Not having a charity formula in my mind, but just give all the money and trust the fact that if I operated on faith, that God would somehow supply more seed that I could be generous. There was even an attempt for me to try to justify my actions because I recalled that, and I was feeling guilty by not giving money to the second man. But then I started thinking, well, the first woman, she actually had a sign out that said hungry and homeless. And then the third guy had a sign out that said, please help. And I thought to myself, well, the second guy, he didn't have a sign acknowledging his need. So maybe if he would have had a sign, I would have saw him quicker. None of that matters. I'm trying to justify in my mind to make things right. By this time, I had chosen what I was going to eat. And I had this big Jimmy John sandwich. And I'm sitting there eating the sandwich and thinking about how I might be getting full off this sandwich, and that second man who I avoided might not have any food that night. And then finally, I'm thinking, what if anything is God trying to show me? Maybe we can find some answers this evening as we look into the scriptures about the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And we'll read that in Luke chapter 16, starting in verse 19. It says, "There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In hell, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, 'Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire.' But Abraham replied, 'Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all of this, between us and you, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us.' He answered, 'Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them so they will not also come to this place of torment.' And Abraham replied, 'They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them.' 'No, Father Abraham,' he said, 'but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent.' He said to him, 'If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead.'" Why did Jesus teach this parable? Jesus' parables are short stories that teach spiritual lessons by analogy. And Jesus was the master storyteller. Quite often, Jesus' stories have this unexpected ending that grabs the listeners and now the reader's attention. And Jesus' parables are so uniquely designed that he draws in the listeners into having new ways of thinking that ultimately lead us into new ways of behaving. Each of Jesus' parables teach maybe only one or two primary points. So it's not really good Bible study if we try to get into the scriptures and exegete every meaning of every sentence of the story. By doing so, we might miss the central point of the parable, thus resembling the proverbial saying, "You can't see the forest for the trees." The story of Lazarus and the rich man is one of those parables. To fully understand Jesus' purpose for telling this story here, we must first put this story in the proper theological context of a larger narrative. It's easy to read this intriguing story, paying attention to all the dichotomies at play. For example, there is the obvious contrast between those who are rich and those who are poor. There's also a contrast between the healthy and the sick. This parable situates both characters in really certain physical conditions. The rich man is living an opulent lifestyle behind a gate of protection, while Lazarus is living a life dependent upon the charity, generosity, and grace of others. Lazarus every day lies there prostrate just outside the gate, body covered with painful sores, with no hope of healing, and longing to eat the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. There is also the juxtaposition between a lifetime of good things and a lifetime of bad things. There's a comparison of life and death, a life of comfort and a life of discomfort. There's salvation in one place and torment in the other. There's hot fire and cool water. There's heaven and there's hell. And this parable also situates these main characters in this permanent spiritual condition. Both men die and leave the earthly realm. The rich man is tormented in hell, while Lazarus is accommodated at Abraham's side. You see, the larger context of this parable goes all the way back to Luke 15, verse 1 and 2, where there's a group of Pharisees and teachers of the law who are mingling in the crowd while Jesus is teaching people. And they instantly start criticizing Jesus over the fact that he has a reputation of spending time with sinners. In Luke 15, verse 1 and 2, it says, now the tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law all muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them? It's in the very next verse, verse 3, where Jesus responds to these religious leaders who are giving him a hard time for eating and befriending such people. This is why we have the story of the rich man and Lazarus, and we'll get there. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law believe that it's actually better to remain distant from such wicked people. So Jesus sets out to correct their entire line of thinking. And in doing so, Jesus doesn't just respond with one parable, he tells a series of 5 parables. And it's important to understand the first 4 so that we can really have a great comprehension on the last one, the rich man and Lazarus. The first one, Jesus starts off as the parable of lost sheep. He says, suppose you got 100 sheep, one wanders away. Don't you leave the 99 and go and find the one? Why? Because that one sheep has value. Jesus is showing the Pharisees and the teachers of law that everyone has value. And then right after that's the parable of the lost coin. A woman has 100 silver coins, she loses one. She basically turns the house upside down to find that one coin. And when she does, the Bible says that she rejoices. Why? Because that one coin has value. Human beings are created in the image of God. And I think we sometimes forget that every human being, no matter where they are, is created in the image of our Creator. And this means that every person has value and dignity in the eyes of God. This is fundamentally what the Bible teaches. It's not a person's status, their wealth, a position, a title, their impact, or influence on society that makes them great. In no other parables does Jesus identify one of the main characters by name. And here, Jesus calls the beggar Lazarus. The rich man is nameless, but the beggar has a name, and it's Lazarus. And interestingly, the name Lazarus is actually the Greek form of the Hebrew name Eleazar. And Eleazar actually means the Lord supports me. The Lord is my helper. You see, throughout this beggar's life, he's received no care or support from others, especially not this rich man. And he's been there. And what this tells us is that God has supported him and God has cared for him. And then the third parable is the parable of the prodigal son. The 2 sons, the older son stays at home, becomes embittered. The younger son leaves, messes up some things, comes to his senses and come back home. But this is basically the story of the prodigal son, the lost son, and it depicts a young man who is chasing after money, but discovers that it is not going to work and it means nothing in his life. And then we get to number 4, the parable of the shrewd manager. In this story, a dishonest manager is actually praised for acting shrewdly. In the story, Jesus teaches on how people use money and resources. The world worships money, and people use money to gain friends and power. And in verse 14 of chapter 16, it simply says, the Pharisees, who love money, heard all of this and was sneering. So Jesus is spending time with sinners. They criticize him for it. Jesus launches into these 4 parables right here to really set the stage for the rich man and Lazarus. It's in this intense exchange that they are now ready to hear about the rich man and Lazarus. The context of the rich man and Lazarus is directed to the Pharisees and those who love money. The purpose of this parable is to teach the religious leaders who believe that wealth was a sign that they were favored by God. And this parable teaches that money does not help a person go to heaven. But the great thing about this parable is that it turns this mode of thinking completely upside down, because it is the rich man who received punishment. And this is the surprise ending for the religious leaders. One can imagine the rich man here thinking to himself, where did I go wrong? Well, by doing absolutely nothing against a backdrop of pain and suffering, the rich man avoided the basic humanity of Lazarus and his value in the eyes of God. The rich man's sin, if there is a sin here, is not about his income, but rather his indifference. And indifference can be defined as a lack of concern, a lack of interest, or a lack of sympathy. This parable teaches that the rich man was indifferent to Lazarus, a human being created in the image of God. There is never any indication of any mistreatment aimed at Lazarus, but by treating Lazarus as an inconvenience or even a nuisance, the rich man failed to establish a relationship with the very people at the heart of Jesus. This parable demands that we who have chosen to follow Christ as disciples open our eyes and see the need of those around us, the poor, the hungry, the thirsty, the sick, those in prison, the stranger, the orphan, the widow, those ethnically separated like the Samaritans, the marginalized, the disposed, and the forgotten. And this parable reminds us that if we do not act, then we are lost. The great civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, once said, at the end of the 20th century, most of us will not be judged by having to repent of the great evils we have done, but of the apathy that has prevented us from doing anything at all. Tonight, we're going to address the question, what do we do when someone asks for money? I'm not exactly sure what we should do, but I am certain why we should do something. And the why is that we should have the same heart that Jesus had, who gave of his presence with people to whom most people usually ignored. Maybe the answer to the question, what do we do, is really simple. Maybe we should just give our relational presence. May God bless our time here tonight.
Thanks so much, Ben. I love that you talked about human dignity. One of the core values of the organization that I work for and that I get to talk about daily is treating others with dignity. And it's really opened my eyes to see what it looks like when interacting with someone who's experiencing life in a different way than me. As disciples, we're called to defend the weak. And I've learned that one of the best ways to honor one's humanity is how I talk about them. Most of the time, terms such as bum, lazy, or even the homeless are used to describe a population of our community. I've had conversations with guests at my job who are defensive about being defined by those labels and are just crying out for someone to see that they do have a job and they are trying to get a place to live. Their job just doesn't pay enough, and there are too many qualifications to meet to have their own home. There's a difference between labeling someone as homeless and saying someone is experiencing homelessness. The first says that is who they are, and the latter says that it's a difficult season in life and there is hope of getting through. We can be that hope. As youth, we are concerned about biblical justice. We want to create change and ripple impact worldwide. We have learned from the successes and failures of those who have gone before us. We desire not to just give handouts to those who are experiencing homelessness, but we want to build long-term relationships and allow them to teach us. We understand that homelessness is complicated and there are many societal reasons that contribute to it overall. So we don't want to just give our time, but we want to have direct impact on our neighbors as we walk the extra mile with them and guide them towards resources that can give them a life of dignity. My generation craves to be a part of a community and bring people together despite their differences. Within the last few years, I've watched friends and peers make this happen by using social media to speak up about injustices, to educate, to share personal stories, and to show the direct effects of the pain in this world. I really believe the approach of treating people with dignity will best help us support our neighbors. By starting conversations like those tonight, we can stop being like the rich man who ignores those who are experiencing life in a different way than us, and grow to be the Good Samaritan who sees the hurts and pains in other humans and does something about it. We can choose to see the humans as our neighbors. I'm so excited to see what we're going to do as we all come together to create a greater impact in our corners of the world.
Homelessness, poverty, drugs.
So many people say, be careful of the homeless. But
What I'm about to show you will change your mind just like it changed mine. See, I have just arrived to an entire village with no houses because everyone here is homeless. Now, many people will stop watching this video because we have a stereotype against homeless people. Most likely, they do drugs, they steal, and most likely, they are dangerous. We think they are homeless and hopeless. But this village is not. In this village, 200 homeless people got together and made their own village with their own rules. That will surprise you. Here, you can't make noise after 8 p.m. You can't steal, you can't do drugs, you can't even unleash your dog. And if you do any of the above,
You are out!
We have strict rules here and zero tolerance policy.
so this homeless village has become a place that's safe for everybody, tourists and locals alike. It is also a place where a community lives. They built a park for kids to play at, a gym to work out at, a small zoo, a plantation farm, and a small made-up beach. Every Sunday, people have to clean this whole place up. And every month, they have to spend 8 hours volunteering per adult. They celebrate Christmas and they teach each other sign language. Why? Because this village has one deaf kid and they wanted him to feel included. All of this is in a city full of homeless people.
Hi, everybody. Terry Loso from Hope Worldwide here, and I'm here with a very good friend of mine, PJ McCraner. PJ McCraner is a member of the Southern Connecticut Church and also part of the homeless outreach team in the area of Connecticut that she lives. And PJ, we are so grateful that you have agreed to come and share your wisdom and expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This
Yeah.
is great.
So glad to. PJ has years of experience, and so I have loved even just getting to connect with PJ and listen to her thoughts, and I think you'll be really encouraged by them too. So I've got a couple of questions for PJ. First of all, PJ, what do you think is the most important thing for us as people, just regular folks, to consider as we first encounter people who are experiencing homelessness in our day-to-day lives? What's the most important part of that first contact, first connection?
I think the most important thing is deciding that we're going to say hello and look at them with love and kindness and respect as fellow human beings that are no different than we are, that are just going through a tough time right now. I think that with just looking at people, we've got to see them without judgment. And I know that that can be challenging at times. I know that we can be intimidated to approach people. And yet the most important thing we can do is just look at them in human terms, that they're no different than we are. I know that in my experiences, there was a particular woman who different people would walk away from her because she had a speech impediment. And she was hard to understand and would spit when she spoke. And I would pray to be able to understand what she was saying. And as we got to know each other, I found out that she was, a 43-year-old single mom that had had a very intense stroke and had lost her partner and was now experiencing homelessness with her 15-year-old son. And I know that when we first met, people would say, oh, she just drinks, she's an alcoholic, she's a drunk, she's on drugs, she's this and she's that. And what I found was a woman who had worked for a very long time before the stroke, and really loved her son, and was a good mother, and needed a hand up, a lift up, to be able to find housing. And now she's housed and brave and strong and very excited. Sent me a Valentine's saying, with a picture of her and her son and their new 2-bedroom apartment. And it was about a year and a half though of building the friendship, building the relationship, and working with her. So that's just one instance. I think that we can go through times where, we'll see people outside of the grocery store or on the street and we're driving. And again, it's a matter of, okay, let's think about what I can do. Let's think about what they may need. And if I'm really thinking about how can I care about this person, then I'm going to be able to figure out a way to help them, whether it's with a gift card, whether it's with, connecting them to resources or anything like that. The main thing though is that in your first encounter, you're trying to build trust, and we really need to think about, how can I care about this person right this minute?
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And as I've been trying to follow your example, you've been a big inspiration to me in this area. And I know that sometimes when my husband and I have, been reaching out to our neighbors, it can be awkward or it can be messy. And sometimes I don't know what to say, but I really appreciate you talking about not being judgmental, not assuming that we know where they're coming from or where they've been or where they're going, and just showing love and focusing on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
You're right. I think too, we talked about this a little bit, this last week, and just, again, it's taking time to build that relationship. And, I know that it's like I have one guy, it took me a year of seeing him on the street and just saying hello and walking past him and offering him my card. And he was so funny. He would not speak to me. He would not, do anything at all, except that he would see me reaching out to other people, and he would start to tell them that they needed to come see me. And so I thought that was very, very funny, because he wouldn't come along at all. And it did take, like I said, it took over a year and a half before he did finally let me speak to him. And then he started coming, to my office and coming to get coffee and allowing us to feed him and allowing us to bring him clothes. And, now it's been, I'd say it's been a total of 2 years, and he just got his housing, this a couple months ago. And, but, if you'd have seen him at the very beginning, you would have been like, oh, this guy is never going to let anybody near him. That's just not who he is. And he's in a challenging, had a challenging life. He has been schizophrenic since he was 14. And so he's been out there, he's been out there a long time. He's 30 now. And, you never know what's going to happen, and you never know how long it's going to take. So going back to just, some practicals or some specifics, definitely take time to introduce yourself. They want to know who you are. Introduce yourself to them. Ask them a little bit about their life and their story. And, you might not be able to do that the first time around. The first time around, it might just be, can I get you a coffee? Can I get you a hot cocoa? Do you need a pair of socks? Some people here in the church here, they'll carry around socks with them or make sandwiches. There are some volunteers that I know that go out at night and just, go with soup and sandwiches and hang out. So, you can ask them about their life, about their journey. You can ask them if they would like to pray with you. You guys can pray together. I think that some of my best times have been just being still with somebody and sitting with them and saying, listen, God loves you very much. You are loved. You are loved by God. And there are times when, I don't have housing for somebody, or I might not have anything for them in that moment, but I can stop and look them square in the eye and focus on them in that moment. And so many times, even when I'm in my office and it's been 45 minutes and I feel so bad because I'm like, I can't offer you a shelter right now. There is no shelter bed, or I don't know what you're going to do tonight. And at the end of the time, it could be 45 minutes in my office and or 45 minutes outside. And by the end of it, they'll look at me and they'll go, thank you so much. And they'll be so incredibly grateful. And it blows my mind that there they are, with holes in their shoes. I haven't really given them anything. I haven't given them a solution necessarily. And yet, because I'm sitting there listening or taking them in, they feel so acknowledged, because what they experience throughout the day, most days, is disrespect.
In conclusion, PJ, is there anything, any sort of closing thoughts or last comments that you want us to walk away with? Any additional thoughts?
Pray for God to give you the heart. That if you see somebody, like it says in Matthew 25, if you see somebody hungry, thirsty, lonely, tired, you name it, the attitude of heart is what counts. And it's, what can I do? How can I love this person so that they can know that they are loved? And that's all I got.
Oh, that's awesome. Beautiful. PJ, thank you so much. We are very grateful for you. We're blessed to have you as part of our fellowship in the ICOC, and I'm very blessed to have you as one of my very good friends. So thank you.
You too.
Thank you, PJ. That was so good. And it's so inspiring that they're disciples in our fellowship who are so accomplished and so well educated and so informed, who have the heart that you do. And I learned a lot from what you shared. I related and identified with judgment. That's been something that's been a big part of how I have responded to my homeless friends on the streets. And that's something I want to change. My takeaway from your talk, PJ, was love and respect. And I think if I and if all of us do that, we're going to be a long way towards being what Jesus wants us to be. And the truth is that for many years, even when I would occasionally engage or give some money to somebody who asked me on the street, I would never start a conversation with them. I would never even share my name. I would never even share their name. And that's something that I have decided to change. I'm excited about that. One thing that really helped me was a couple of years ago, I volunteered for the Union Station Homeless Services in Pasadena, where I lived. And I was able to become a volunteer mentor for those who were coming out of homelessness. And it was very exciting. I spent a year with John. I spent a year with Daniel. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn, not just how I might be able to help them, but how they could help me. And it was fantastic. So next up, we're going to share a video that was made by Eric Roberson. Eric's one of our Hope Worldwide staff members, and he's going to share a video that he made with a friend. And then after that, Fern Blackburn, who's from our Hope Worldwide chapter in San Diego. He's going to share some fantastic practical ideas for us. And just to let you know, we've had some difficulties with the video. And so if it's a little bit choppy, the audio should still be good. So let's hear what see Eric's video, and let's hear what Fern has to say.
Hey everybody, my name is Eric Roberson from Hope Worldwide, and this is my daughter High Fashion. We have the pleasure of introducing to you a friend of mine, David Brown. David and I actually met at Starbucks and began talking, and he shared his life story with me as well as some poetry. He's actively pursuing support for a book that he's hoping to get published, and he wanted to share some of his poetry as well as his life story with us today. His poetry is far from rudimentary and is like a plume of goodwill, sheltering whoever is listening. Ladies and gentlemen, David Brown.
And David, I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, today I would like to share with you that I am a poet. I am a diagnosed schizophrenic. Writing poetry brings healing. It just opens your mind to a lot of things, and that's what I'm about, to open people's eyes and mind, and to be not biased and not prejudiced, but be open to get knowledge and wisdom from someone's experience.
Earlier we were talking and you shared about your relationship with Jesus and how that affects your poetry and why you do what you do. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Jesus gave me a path, but actually Jesus inspired my mom. She was crying and she said, David, you got to bring about change. And I said, okay. So I chose to write poetry. I said, give me an outlet. How can I serve the world? And Jesus freely gave. He freely healed people from demons and leprosy and all diseases and stuff. So you want to heal people's minds, and that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, with my poetry, you want to heal people's minds and hearts and mend their souls and bring them close to Christ Jesus. You know that Jesus gives everything in abundance. Yeah, well, as far as my housing is concerned, I was homeless for 5 months. So I'm up in the air with it right now. I don't know how my situation is. I am on SSI. I can barely afford rent. And the government is doing their part, but the church, I believe the church should step in and get involved in helping people that's in a like manner of my same situation to get help with housing so they can better the community and stuff and be active. There are many outlets, so that's why I'm becoming a speaker and an advocate for people to say, hey, we got to wake up, make the change. Let's stand, let's write, let's encourage one another to believe in God, to believe in Jesus, and to serve Him and serve others with love and being sincere and genuine. The 5 months, it helped inspire me to write and, talk about the ills and a disrespect that people have towards people that are weak. And we should not disrespect people that are weak, but we should be gentle and considerate with their position and help them up. That's what we should do. So that's what this homelessness has taught me, like to help others. So, how can we help one another? How can we benefit and share with one another despite our flaws and weaknesses? So with this poetry, I wrote, my talents, what I'm about. I revealed to them who I am and how we should care for one another. I am lonely as Adam. I present myself lowly and humble and greet every beautiful creature, but it seems that they can't fathom my nature. I know that my hair is wild. I wear the same clothes every day and haven't bathed for months. I forgot how to live as a human being, but what happened to that sisterhood and brotherhood that will embrace me to their home and have me bathe and then change in new clothes? Hospitality is not in existence. Because I'm bad smelling and look horrible, men and women keep their distance. I'm a man of flaws but gifted with talents to write, make music on a harp, and sing a joyful song. Is there something wrong with me or you? We forget that we are all God's children and human beings that need care. Reality is that I am weak. Where's my help from a king or queen that is noble to look beyond my faults? I'm in prison in my past. I have been a clown and meddled with hearts and minds, but this I ask of your forgiveness, people. I rise and wake in the morning, brush my teeth. Who am I to meet and greet? No man or woman wants to take time to speak. Why then do we have questions such as, do you want to get to know me? Can I talk to you? No, I am not through, but many more questions I have. What is your name? I am made for love, and God has received me and molded me to be brilliant, resilient. I have shed tears in a public square, and yet I am ignored. Why such rejection from men and women? I don't understand. Where's the support from the sisterhood for the brotherhood? Do you want someone that is smart with a plan? Are you willing to build in love and trust with patience? I am a match made from God. He made rich and poor, and all I ask is give me a chance. Will you change your answer from no to yes? Bless me with your kindness if you care to change the world.
I have the privilege in the next few minutes to give you some practicals and some tools that have helped me give our friends in need a hand up and not a handout. I am deeply impacted by the lesson of the parable of the rich man and Lazarus in the book of Luke. And I pray that we internalize this lesson and give a little thought to the available resources that we have so that we can give our friends a hand up. Now, we all have various gifts, and sometimes we just need a little boost just to get things going. Now, I found that going and looking at national resources is an important fact, an important part of serving. 211 is a great website that we can use. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our visitors to the site can go in and find resources for emergency relief, home needs and housing needs, food, healthcare services, and even things like utilities assistance, transportation needs, education needs, veterans assistance. 211 is a very powerful site. And how do you get there? You just go to 211.org or just call 211 on the phone. It's a very rich site for resources. And you'll hear a little bit about it later. Now, also, we can take time and go to our local community resources and find out what the community has to offer as well. But more importantly, what can you do? You can carry brochures. You can make little cards that have telephone numbers on it. When we do things here in San Diego, we have little pocket brochures and things that give addresses and locations where you can find different resources and different things. So one of the things that I find is that the local organizations and nonprofits, they're the experts. They have fresh websites, so don't be afraid to go to those resources and find different ways that you can serve. Now, today is a great day. It is an example of what we should do with our volunteers. Coming today to seminars and the resources that we have here at this on this site, on this Zoom, will help you refresh your way and your methods for serving the community. Now, one of the things that I found that's really important is first contact. We have to be aware of ourselves and what we do during first contact. Now, in Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So our mindset, it's important to have a different mindset. We need to respect and love those who are out there that have these needs. Lazarus was a friend in need. One of the things that I pray that we do is to call our friends by their name. So that was an important lesson for me. Learn their name, learn their story. So one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that we learn his story and not repeat history, the history of making promises that you cannot keep, the history of common letdowns and rare follow through. So let's avoid the fixing approach. Let's open our ears and not be afraid. Be an active listener and keep in mind that it takes time. It takes time to earn and establish trust. It takes time to get past that immediate and that initial contact for relief. So make sure you have solutions that are tangible and attainable, but be ready. So one of the things that we found is that when you have disciples that
that are excited about serving. We got brothers and sisters like Brian and Tara Finneger in San Diego chapter. They established a car ministry. And in this car ministry, all they did was have the disciples collect essentials and had it in their car. And what they did was they had those items in the car at the beginning of the day, and throughout their day, they had the essentials there. Things like water, hygiene kits, food, fleece blankets, even belts. So carry those things with you in your car so you can help out our friends in need. We also have ideas like carrying gift cards. Make sure that you carry a gift card to a restaurant or a facility where our friends can actually be served and not be harassed. Now, I love our youth and our Hope Scouts and our Hope Troops. They can also get involved. They can make little cards and little thank you cards and encouragement cards. Make sure they don't use their last name, just their first name. We want to keep privacy available to ourselves, but make sure that the youth are involved. Now, don't forget water. Water is gold, and I'll keep saying it. Water, hygiene kits. Water is gold in the community. So since I'm a safety manager, we can't forget safety. That's what I do every day. So know that safety is important for all. Now, our homeless friends and our homeless neighbors, they may not necessarily be dangerous, but some of them will have or may have mental health issues. So we want to be careful, we want to look at the cues, we want to make sure that we're aware of our environment. Now, if someone doesn't make eye contact with you, if they are not paying attention to you, then just politely move on. One of the things that I like to do is since I'm a retired Marine, is to use the buddy system. So always have somebody with you when you go out and serve. That way you feel safe and everybody feels safe and everything's good when you're out. One of the things that we also have to realize is that there is an elephant in the room still called COVID. So when we're out, let's remember to research the local policy and the national policy and COVID guidelines, because our neighbors may not have access to the vaccines yet. And we want to keep everybody safe. So one of the things that I want to do is to provide us a few opportunities and a few little information on other things that we can do. Now, when you look at projects, there probably aren't many new projects, but there's new ways to do projects. So don't be afraid to get after it. The food drives are still valuable. The blood drives are still valuable. Even during the pandemic, the Red Cross is looking for blood. And the hygiene kits, Old Faithful, water, Old Faithful, those things will never get stale. They'll never go away. So always have those things in your backpack. And speaking of backpacks, that's one of the things that we did great in San Diego. We had a backpack drive. We have it twice a year to serve the kids and school-age kids, and it was great. We have hospitals, the children's hospitals, we have caseworkers, and we have a lot of people come back to us for a backpack, no pun intended. Now, one of the things that you want to do is advertise those services. So if you have brothers and sisters that are professionals in art, in web design, in language, advertise those services. Now, one of the things I want you to realize is that some of our citizens and some of our friends are in a protected class. So please remember not to take pictures without permission, and don't post pictures without express permission. So one of the best things that we've done in San Diego, though, is we registered our services on 211. So we are actually a service. When you go to 211, you will find us there. That is a great thing for anybody to do as an individual or as a chapter. And then you have people constantly coming back to you, and you control the volume of the way you serve. Now, like I said before, we don't have a whole lot of time. So in closing, what I want to do to you is I want to offer me up. I love offering Fern up. So I'm here as a resource to you. We're on this journey together. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions, any concerns, or if you have new ideas, because we can get after it. I love new ideas. Now, I want you to remember that we should follow Luke 10 also. Be that good Samaritan. Be the good Samaritan. And remember the lessons in Luke 16. Don't do what the rich ruler did. The Lazarus of the world deserve our respect. They deserve our love. They deserve our heart. Thank you very much for allowing me to share. I love you all and have a great day.
Thank you, Fern. That was fantastic. What I learned is that we should be intentional, and that if I prepare and plan, I can make even more of a difference. And so a lot of great practical ideas there again, Fern. Thank you very much. So what is the answer to our original question? What should we do when someone asks us for money on the street? And what I've learned tonight is that because everyone is different, my response will vary. And I want to say more about that. But first of all, I want to read a quote for you. Last year, my friend Terry Loso gave me a book. The title is The Irresistible Revolution. It's by Shane Claiborne. And I love this quote from Shane's book, and I'm going to read it to make sure I get it right. As a Christian, should I give money to people experiencing homelessness or beggars? This is a question I have asked, heard, and discussed a million times. I love this answer. What we can say with confidence is that Jesus would not ignore them. Give to everyone who asks means don't ignore people. We can always give dignity, attention, time, and a listening ear. Sometimes we give money, sometimes not, but we can always give love. So the real question is not, should we give money to those who ask us on the street? The real question is, as a follower of Jesus or somebody who just loves people, am I going to show that person that I'm coming in contact with that I care about them, that I love them, that I respect them? Am I going to treat them with dignity? Am I going to treat them really as a fellow human being and show them the kind of love that Jesus would show them? And so that might mean that I give them money, and it might not. But the real question is, am I going to love people like Jesus did? And I want you to imagine for a moment a world where all of us who call ourselves Christians would approach our houseless neighbors, and that we would treat them with this kind of love, kindness, dignity, and respect. What a difference that would make in this dark world. What a light we could be in this dark world that we live in. So as we close out, I want to just ask and share a few things with you. First of all, please answer the post-webinar survey questions. You can find the link to that in the chat box. I also want to let you know that the recording of this webinar will be available soon on our Hope Worldwide YouTube channel. As well, look for our next training webinar in June. And then finally, I would say you have the opportunity to get involved in some optional Zoom discussion groups following this webinar's conclusion, and you can find the information about that as well in the chat box. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and God bless.